Well, you gotta understand, we came up through the Black Liberation Movement. A lot of my memories will probably come from like the mid to late '80s when we were doing a lot of stuff all throughout Oakland. I could vividly remember doing like drives in 6-9ville, 65th Village. We go out with a big RV, blood pressure checks, HIV screening and stuff like that. We went to the Acorn Projects. That would be in West Oakland. Not only that, our main headquarters was on MacArthur, 79th and MacArthur. So we were like deep in the hood, you know what I mean, in the heart of East Oakland. And this was at a time where it was like right after the Panthers had been crushed throughout from the whole crack epidemic that the government had brung into Oakland. You know, it crushed the Black Panther Party. And it was at a time where it was like a lot of anarchy going on in Oakland. You know, people running up in our buildings while we having meetings, needles and crack vials everywhere. It was just a crazy time, you know what I'm saying? If you listen to old Too Short rhymes, you might hear them talking about a lot of shit that a lot of rappers ain't talking about now, you know, as far as the whole drug culture. You know, that was something that the Bay Area really brought to the table because that was really prevalent at the time. So when we were there, that was at a time where we were getting that transition period. We were bringing a lot of those things back to the table, and a lot of that aggression and a lot of that stuff was being like directed towards the arts and shit like that. So we'll have a meeting, but in the middle of the meeting we'll have like, you know what I mean, what you call you get up there, you do your poetry, you know what I'm saying, you do your rap. It was the time for culture, you know what I'm saying. Even every so often we have festivals in West Oakland, East Oakland, Little Bobby Hutton Park. So it was a time where I remember the politics, but I also remember the culture just as meaningful, you know what I'm saying. Everything meshed together. Ali Al, Belly Vale, you know what I'm saying, Ray Love, Tupac Shakur, Paris, you know what I mean. It was just a great time for me, and it was like the golden age of hip hop. Even though you hear about the golden age of hip hop in New York, it seemed like we was in a whole nother age where it was kind of like, I don't know, I can't explain. It was on some other shit, like geared toward like trying to get out of that whole drug induced feel that they had going on in the Bay Area. Shit was kind of like crazy. That I used to sit out. I used to sit out right in front of the building. You know what I mean? And we was on MacArthur, 79th and MacArthur, which was a main. I mean, it was like a track basically. You know what I'm saying? You had the red fence. You had all type of shit going on. You know, you had murders going on. We actually had a couple of funerals in the warehouse. You know what I mean? It was that deep. But at the same time, it seemed like it wasn't. We grew up in the middle of it, but it wasn't really that crazy for us. It was regular type of shit, you know, because at the same time, we might mess around and throw a party at the warehouse, you know what I mean? And we was prepared for whatever, so it was like you knew what was coming with it, but at the same time, we still was there for the people. It's not like we was ducking and hiding and running back, you know what I mean? It's funny because my pops, he knew Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mom and shit. They was in the movement, you know. When you're in the movement at that time, everybody kind of knows each other, everybody, you know. So it kind of came around full circle when Digital Underground is who I knew first. I heard of Digital Underground, but Tupac was a dancer for them at the time. So at the end of the night, after we finished with all our business at the center and shit, we might have to break down some shit or something like that because we knew that Digital Underground and Tupac, you know what I mean, was coming in to practice that night. Or we might stick around and watch the practice and shit. You know, I knew one of the guys, the DJ, his name was Neil, his mom, Gloria Green. She was close friends with my mom, and, you know, she used to watch us sometimes. So it was just, but the shit seemed regular back then. It wasn't like no big time shit. You might be walking down MacArthur and see Too Short riding his Cadillac. You know what I'm saying? You might see Richie Rich coming to the red fence, you know what I'm saying, to buy some weed or some shit. So it was all it was just like one big gumbo pot in Oakland. It was cool. My memory with Huey, probably my first memory with Huey is probably, I forget what hospital that was, but probably me and my pops and my brother going to see Huey in the hospital. I don't remember what he was in there for, but we went to see him, and I just remember my pops was just making a big deal about Huey, you know what I mean? But back then we was used to meeting motherfuckers in the movement and in the organization, so, but for some reason he was just extra excited about this was Huey, we going to see Huey. So, you know, it turned out that Huey was a significant person in the movement, you know what I'm saying? You hear Tupac, you hear everybody talking about Huey, but one thing about Huey is, it was at a point, like what I said, when they brought the crack into Oakland, into the Bay Area, it hit the Panthers hard. And Huey was one of those people that was hit hard by it. So he was at a period where he was at a time when he was struggling with that. And he also had a nephew that stayed around the Uhura house on MacArthur who was struggling with the same thing. He was struggling with that, Huey. And it was just at a time where we were trying to kind of nurse him back to health and get him back on track and shit and build his mind up and get him back in the game and let him know that we love him, that the people love him and shit like that. And he was kind of hesitant at first, but we finally got Huey out. We got him nursed up. We had him good. You know what I mean? He came to our building on MacArthur. I mean, the shit was out the door, you know. It was big. It was packed. And him and my pops, it was a big meeting. It was a big feeling for me, and we did a lot of big meetings. But I knew from the people that was coming in and from the way that shit was that day, just the feel of that day, it was a big day. So it ended up being a real big comeback for Huey, I'ma say, and it was tragic. He even felt the comeback. He felt the comeback. You know what I'm saying? You could see from when the start of the meeting to the end of the meeting, he had fed off the energy of the people, and you could tell he was back. So it was tragic. For shortly after that meeting, he was killed. He was killed in Oakland. From what the media said, a drug deal gone bad and shit like that. And a lot of people in the Bay Area even questioned that. You know what I mean? It was at a time where it was questionable. So one thing that the movement did was they made it to where Huey, his legacy is where it is now. It is where his legacy is remembered in a certain type of way, where the last thing you kind of remember of Huey is that comeback, that big meeting that we had on MacArthur. You know what I mean? You don't look at Huey as a brother who fell victim to the shit that they brought into the Bay Area. You know what I mean? So we was able to reverse that. And when he died, it was kind of a sad feeling. It was the biggest memorial I have ever seen. It was, to me, it seemed like 20,000 motherfuckers at my age. You know, people on top of cars, you know what I mean? It was just a big thing, but at the same time, it was sad, but it wasn't sad. It was like it brought energy into the Bay Area, because we had last seen Huey at a dignified state to where he was kind of like passing that torch. You know what I mean? It's like right before you see your grandma, before she passed, but she give you them encouraging words. She went out like a fighter. You sad, but at the same time, you like, I got to keep this shit going. You know what I mean? So that was the whole feel of that, and it just felt good to be a part of that whole thing.